Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. We're talking to Shanna Warwick from Black Boots. I promoted this podcast a bit ago and I said Black Bits, but it should be Black Boots. And we'll get to all that information. You guys know Shanna by now. And also, I forgot, Paranormal Karen Paraphernalia is out if you go to my website, rontowski.com, paranormalkaren.com. You can get t-shirts. Also, Patreon is Patreon.com/Rontowski. You can book a reading at karenrontowski.com, whatever, all that stuff. You all know. Let's jump right in, my darling. So we are taping this in December, but we could absolutely be having the same conversation in February. How is your snow?
Oh, how's my snow? Currently melting, yet still full of ice. I don't know what's going on out there. It's crazy up here, you know.
I know. I made it to yoga. That's my prideful moment, is that even in the horrible snow, I made it to yoga. But on the way home, I was like, why am I out? Although people on my street seem to be moving along okay, but it's a heavy snow. It was hard to get my car in its parking spot.
Yeah, and congratulations to us to even being like upright right now, because in the winter up here, it's like after 4:30 p.m., forget it. We're done.
I can't stop sleeping.
Yeah.
And I finally stopped fighting it, I'm so, until like 10 a.m., I am just drowsy out of it. So, so hopefully in February when this plays, we won't be having another storm, but it's like literally, I had a gig tonight and they canceled it on Wednesday. And I was like, okay, all right. So my darling, witch, psychic, reader, I loved it when you came to my show. And this is what I remember the most. So I did a little show in like a pizza joint down by where you are. And you came with two friends and you all wore the classic witch hat, the pointed cap, and which was so great. And also, we were all over 5'9". Like, we were big girls. We were big, scary witches.
Yeah. We, living up here, sometimes you walk into spaces and you're just like, the record stops and people are like, what's going on? It's like, no big deal. It's just your resident witches crawling out of our little holes and taking over the space.
And also, I noticed this sometimes here, and I noticed it in Gettysburg, where they were so small. People were so small that old buildings are small.
I don't know what it is, because I used to say that the reason why I was so tall is because I grew up on a farm and I was used to walking through like the cow shit. So it like fertilized me and just like grew, and here I am.
So funny. Oh my God. I remember in Gettysburg, I was ducking all the time. I was ducking under everything all the time. So my dear, where shall we begin? What have you been stirring in your cauldron? Please tell me.
Yes, so much. I had kind of an agenda that I thought in my head, a couple days ago. And then I had this download that I thought it kind of connects everything that we were talking about. And right before I went into meditation, I was like, okay, what am I supposed to talk about on Karen's podcast? And some pretty crazy things came through.
Awesome.
So yeah, are you ready?
Seatbelt on. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up AI, and it's definitely a controversial thing right now, especially in the fellow artist world. I'm an artist. It's what I do. And I'm seeing like a lot of like, no AI, this is why it's horrible. And, I kind of have been sort of like on the fence, because I had this experience where I was playing with AI, putting in, the prompts in Midjourney, doing the whole thing, getting some images and getting really excited about it. And then I had a meditation afterwards, and basically it like prompted this whole, like, here's everything that your soul has been dreaming about creating once it came into this body. It was like showing me like all these different things that I'm like super excited to make in the physical. And it just like really gave me pause. I was like, hold on, there's something else here. It's not just this algorithm that's quote unquote stealing from other artists. And I get that. And please know that I very much like respect that. However, what came through today is that AI is teaching us to connect and showing us the collective kind of worlds, like using it as a tool. It is the tool. We are the tool. Like these vessels are these bodies are vessels. They're filters. And it's almost like the AI is just this physical manifestation of what we've already been doing, like how we tap into the collective and pull in, especially as artists. I mean, have you ever had a piece of artwork come out of you that you look at it later and you're just like, that's not me. Like, that's not just me.
Interesting. I have this weird theory I have to throw in. I used to say plastic surgery was for making people look a younger version of themselves, but I feel like the Hollywood celebrities that you feel that are changing so much, they're trying to look like AI. I don't understand it, but they're trying to look like AI.
Whoa.
I know.
That's an interesting spin on things.
Yeah, it's a weird, because some of them they don't look like real people anymore. And it doesn't make sense to me because I thought you were just supposed to look younger.
Right. And I mean, if you spent any time working with AI, any of these programs that are out right now, it really pulls you in. And even my husband came down after when I was playing with it, he's like, oh, you're just feeding the beast. I'm like, yeah, I kind of am. But I'm also like, I'm really interested in why it's pulling me in so much. Because I think it's really we need this outward example of what it means to really tap into the collective.
Yeah.
In order to it's some kind of tool, but it's also just some kind of next steps. And I think people are getting triggered by it because they're already kind of doing it and they understand it on another level. And it's like it's right, but it's like not quite right kind of thing.
I think so. It's a funny, because I know as a comedian, a lot of my jokes have just been taken and turned into memes without my permission. So there's a weird thing there. I always thought that social media was our test for telepathy to know what everyone's thinking, and it hasn't gone well.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting that you say that. So, and let's do a real good definition of AI, because some people know. I kind of know. But I also, I did one that said, show me Karen Rontowski as a fairy. And I got that picture. It's kind of weird. It's very colorful and my face is very squished. And I was like, I wonder if AI even knows who I am or whatever like that. But when you say AI, you mean when you feed certain things into a program and the program mashes them together and comes out with the outcome. Is that right?
Yeah, basically. So there's different, so the one that I've been using, Midjourney, just came out. Well, maybe not just, but you can now upload your own image and it'll draw from that plus all of the algorithms. So there's definitely it's quickly advancing. And, there's other ones that are just you uploading images of yourself and they're giving you different versions of you.
Okay. That's called Midheaven?
So yeah, the one is Midjourney, the other one is Lenza, and of course there's all sorts of conspiracy theories, all sorts of and maybe some of it is true, connections to hackers, especially not crediting artists, and I get that. That's definitely a factor. I don't want to discredit that at all, but there's just something else there that I think that this is showing us, and it's and it works into the other topics that I wanted to talk to. It's what are your connection points for pulling?
Oops. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So I stopped that, folks, because there was a weird phone thing, but you probably heard it. So go ahead. Yes. Keep, you know what? I'll throw this in since I stopped anyways. There's good and bad about everything. And it's really hard because I remember when everybody did that Facebook app where you see yourself age, and then they were like, that's China's facial recognition, or there was something about it that another country had kept or Russia maybe, and you're never going to escape that, good or bad. It's never going to be escaped. That's what I feel like. I feel like there's some good things, there's some bad things, but it's hard to say like AI is bad because, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to like put like the definitive, like, this is what it is, this is what it's doing, this is why it's bad. I think there's definitely just like, there's more to it, there's more nuance, and it's also, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. And kind of like wrapping our brain around how we can work with it energetically, especially at this like, younger stage of it or whatever, I think is really important, especially, I mean, me as an artist, understanding what it's doing, how it's affecting. And it brings me to this point of like how we pull in an energy, and like how the connection points in our own body, like how are we taking in information, what, where are we kind of pulling our inspiration in from as creative people, as, artists, comedians, writers, whatever you are, and like being really clear about where those points are. And that's something that I've been working with a lot. And I brought this up to you. Have you ever heard of womb rocking?
No.
So womb rocking is really interesting. It's like moving the pelvic bowl, and it can be done by, it is sort of a biologically gendered thing, but it can also just be used specifically in the part of this particular part of the body. But it's like moving and tapping into the womb space, and like moving the pelvic bowl. There's like a specific way that you kind of like move the pelvic bowl back and forth. And I'm not good with like I know what my body parts are, but I don't know the specifics of them. So if I'm off, please just, forgive me.
I can't help you with that because I'm worse than you're going to be. So go ahead. People at home, don't cringe. Okay. Well, you'll know what we mean.
Yeah. But it's moving, it's tapping into the pelvic bowl and moving into that pelvic bowl and kind of tapping into this like collective, your own feminine energy, but also the collective feminine energy kind of comes in. And there's different practices. I first did this with one of my teachers, and her big thing was like having people come together, and one person kind of does this practice at a time, and everyone witnesses them and then gives them kind of feedback and like kind of praises them after they show themselves this way, which I think is an interesting component to it. But it's also just what happens if you're tapping into that part of your body with this kind of motion, and what does it start to bring in? Because it's really, for me, it's been opening up a lot of different energetic points. There's it's so connected to like your base and your sexuality and like that, and like how is it pulling things in energetically, and what are you kind of doing with that energy, like where are you putting it? Especially, I specifically go into these practices with the idea of pulling in ideas, pulling in creative ideas, and then going down into my studio space and like birthing it, quote unquote, bringing it out, allowing it to kind of roll through me. And sometimes it's immediate. Other times it's like bringing these different ideas in, bringing these energies in, and like being able to hold them in your body, which sometimes like makes you feel like a complete lunatic, to be honest, when you're like, like when the idea is like there, but it's like not fully there, and you're just like waiting for it to get out.
Mm-hmm.
It like, it like brings up almost like this mania of like, well, here it is. And, but I can't quite get it out yet. I'm just going to hold it. So instead, I'm going to drive everybody else nuts around me because I'm just going to be buzzing around like a little lunatic. But like really thinking about these ideas of how we're bringing in information, if it's not just, like a visual thing.
Right. I get it. And in fact, I really feel like we've had this discussion where I feel like art is now how our guides integrate. Like it's not like mine used to be just straight out writing in the morning. And sometimes now it's art that somehow integrates information so that I don't even know. I get it, but you know what I mean? But it's not as clear. Also, energetically, especially if you're an intuitive person, you're bringing it in through all of your body.
Right. Yeah. And just deciding to be really specific about it. You're bringing it in through your heart. You're bringing it in. Yeah. It's coming in through all different ways. And I feel like even if you're sort of doubting some of the ways that it's bringing in, there's like all these little signs. This brings us to the freaking birds that are around that just like show up. It's crazy the way they show up.
Mm-hmm. I have one bird story, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll tell you my favorite bird story so far. I hadn't talked to one of my friends in a while, and she was like, we just need to talk. Like, just call me. We just need to talk. She's like, I feel like I got to tell you something. And we get on the phone and we start having this conversation, and she just starts going off about like what I'm doing, her kind of perspective of how I'm working. And I'm looking out at my yard, which I live in the woods. And all of a sudden, there's a crow in my yard, which I don't normally see because I have cats that are outside. I never, like, I see them in the trees, but I don't ever see them on the ground. And I'm like listening to my friend, and then another crow shows up, and I'm listening, and the crows are just walking around. And then I'm seeing like little squirrels show. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, okay, pay attention to what your friend is saying. There's something coming through her that you need to pay attention to. And, it's crows, it's different birds that are coming through, but like they really have a lot. They're like our support system right now.
It's very interesting. Okay, so we were talking about how there's that theory that pigeons aren't real or something like that. I'm not that familiar with that theory or conspiracy or whatever. Could be, maybe not. Yes, maybe not. So, but crows seem to be something different. And it's very interesting because somebody was talking about Odin's crows or something like that. I can't remember what it was. So as I'm walking, this was when I was in LA, I'm walking and I see two crows start circling me. And one of them is holding a bag from McDonald's in it. And in his hand, and it's like he pulled it out of the garbage. And I literally in my mind, I thought, go ahead, I'll open that for you. And he dropped it at my feet. And I opened it, and they took all the French fries, and I threw the bag away. And I know that's a weird interaction, but it's like they were like, "Can you please open this for us?"
Yeah, they are just showing up in the craziest ways. And people are coming to and I'm hearing more stories. Like I feel like I'm gathering all these stories from people, and I really just think that there's just not enough bodies right now for these advanced souls. So they're just like, forget about it. I'll come into a bird body. Let's do it. They're just like here. They're just going to do it. And they're just going to be supportive of us. And if you really if you starting to pay attention, I think I told you this story, Karen, but I was going out to LA in October, and basically I knew in my head that I shouldn't go out there for this trip, but it was already happening, blah, blah, blah. And on the way to the airport, my husband was driving me, and a bird, I think it was I don't know what it was, an osprey or something bigger, came through, and we almost hit it, to the point where I could see the individual colors on the feathers, and we almost hit it. And I was like, oh, man, I'm not supposed to go. And I mean, sure enough, it was not a good trip. I don't know that I'll be going back to LA anytime soon.
Wow.
But they just show up. They keep, yeah.
It's funny because my friend that's a demonologist, his wife was telling me when they first started dating, he was like, you gotta kind of watch out. And a black crow, she was just driving on the freeway and just a dead crow fell on her windshield.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. So interesting. Okay. So so they do bring us messages. I'm completely with you on that.
Yeah, they definitely bring us messages. I think they are also showing up, for me personally, they're showing up when I'm doubting myself, when I'm having a moment of oh, I'm not as magical as I think I am. I'm not as clairvoyant as I claim to be. And then I'll hear the crow will start going. And I'm like, okay, stop it. Get over yourself. You are who you are. They definitely they show up for us. And even I think giving them that intention, like, okay, something show up for me. I think, it doesn't necessarily have to be the birds, but I think the birds are just, it's easier for them to get around, and just like be everywhere.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. So yes, so birds have been showing up for you all over, huh?
Oh my goodness, yeah, all over. I've had moments. I ride my bike around, and I'm very intentional about when I ride my bike. Like I'm trying to like put energy back into the earth as I'm riding.
Nice.
And there'll be moments where I'm like, I turned a corner, and all of a sudden I rode through this whole murder of crows, and they just like erupted, and I was like, oh, like look at how powerful I am. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, just those moments, but really like paying attention to that. And then again, just remembering like who you are, and thinking about like how you're bringing in information, how you're bringing in energy, and like what the different points are, the different ways that you can do it, because it's not just one way anymore.
Right. Remembering who you are is going to be the theme of 2023 beyond. And I am going to close my show every day, if I remember, with I know who I am.
Absolutely. There's so many people coming to me that are just like, in the reading space, that are just like, I feel like there's something else. Like there's something else I should be doing. I'm like, yeah, you're doing it right now. You just need to open up. There is something else. And that something else is just opening up to this, opening up to who you are. One of the big practices that I do right now is just, while very much staying within my body, I'm also just like allowing my awareness to just like expand and just completely like, it's like an opening, but it's also like a melting. And it just kind of like, it spills me like in, like eventually after I work it for a little bit and just keep like allowing myself to open up and like dissolve, it like brings me to what I'm calling the void, which is like where I work, where I think a lot of us work.
Yes, this is a great topic. You know what? Hold on one second. Let's take a break, and we'll come right back, folks.
Many people are unaware just how much hypnotherapy can help them, or think it's only to help lose weight or quit smoking. But there is so much more hypnotherapy can do. It can help with stress, anxiety, insomnia, phobias, performance enhancement, connecting with your spirit guides and higher self. You can even discover past lives and your life between lives. Heal traumas, break habits, find your deepest truth, or just have fun discovering who you really are, all from the comfort of your home. I'm Monique Pliakis. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I want to help you. Schedule a free consult by going to www.innerstandingshypnosis.com. That's INNERSTANDINGSHYPNOSIS.com. Innerstandings Hypnosis. Find your power and ignite your inner light.
Okay, yes. I love this. I even love the name, Working in the Void.
Yeah, there's like an allure to it, right? Like, and, I think some people definitely work kind of in the more light, the love and light, and they really come in to kind of bring that light in. And not saying that I don't bring a light in. I think I do. I think it's a different color.
Well, I'm with you, and I love that because I love that because I think I always have to say I walk a little bit on the darker side, which means you do both. So it's an integration. That's why like the word light worker is a really weird word to me. I don't fit into that category.
Yeah. I think like energetically I'm doing what the light workers do, but I'm not working it from the light. Like I'm not scared of the dark. I wear all black. I'm like, like I said, we're like a 5'10" wearing all black girl that loves to wear heels and like be this like force of darkness,
Uh-huh.
It's like an outward thing, but it's because that's where I'm comfortable. Like I'm okay just completely dissolving. And this goes back to, and I know I talked about this a lot more in the previous podcast about just my dissociation and the way that I would leave my body, because I really kind of gained some insight around that of like, when I left my body, I was going to the void. I was going to that black space, that nothingness that's more comfortable for me, because it's like everything and it's nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's nothing there, but there's also, you can start feeling into like creating anything there, because it's like, do you know what I mean?
Yes. And also, there's a thing about when I used to meditate, I used to see myself in pudding, like, because I needed something that would suspend my body. But there was something about it that it was about being in the void, the quiet void of meditation.
Yeah, like being held in that space and knowing that you're okay, but also knowing that in that space, that's where you can create anything that you want. That's where you can start pulling in. It's like, okay, here I am, I'm in nothing. So how, like, what do I want to create out of this nothing? And I think that kind of goes back to like my soul showing me, like, this is what I've been dreaming about creating. This is what I wanted to do through this particular body and this particular, you know, with these quote unquote filters, with these like lived experiences. This is what I've kind of wanted. And it's like pulling in from that, and also pulling in from just like, okay, well, as an artist, like, what does the collective need right now? What does it need to see? Because that's what I'm here for, is to like put this work into the world to like advance us.
I couldn't agree. And again, I think that art, you know, this is such a thing because people, you know, that art's not a real job, or whatever people think with that is so crazy to me. And I used to think like that, and now things are really changing with me. But I think we are integrating ideas and stuff that we don't even know about, or, you know what I mean? Like, not just ideas, but I mean, art calms you. Video is art, you know, it's all doing its thing. So.
Yeah, and we come back to the quote, to like the masters for, you know, certain reasons, to learn certain things, to learn certain techniques. You know, if it's color theory or, you know, whatever it might be, we come back to them for a reason, because it's like we keep kind of like not recycling, but like cycling through the information and like pulling in what we need right now, not only for ourselves, but also, again, we're all connected, right? So what else needs to be out there, and what version of it needs to be put out there? And, you know, you can channel it, you can, you know, whatever you want to call it. It's all kind of bringing you to the same point, as long as you're actually willing to like create whatever the thing is, you know, and just.
I was going to say, do you think as a collective, we're going a little bit into a void? I know that's like a weird thing, but I keep feeling like we keep jumping timelines, and there's sort of an in-between time there that's very odd.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because, you know, because I really resonate with that space so much, and I feel like I visit it so often, like maybe it is what the collective needs. Like maybe we do need to just kind of like
cleanse,
almost like, yeah, like reset. Like a huge reset.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that could totally be what we're kind of working towards, as we're like learning more and more through all of these crazy things.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Now, do you feel like this is maybe this is a different version of the void, but I've sort of learned, first of all, there's one day I sort of did a meditation popped up in my head, and I did it, and it was really just about cleansing chakras and then laying there. And I was in such a relaxed state, which is really weird, because now I feel like we're carrying stress in so many places where we don't realize it. And I heard in my head, like very clearly, this is the state you manifest from, this completely relaxed state. And also Carolyn Miss is always talking about working on your crap, get your crap out of you. You've got to be like a hollow to take in. So is the void maybe that place where you can go where there's nothing, or there's no outer where you can build from there?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's not having any of that outside influence, shutting off the thinking brain that just like keeps like spinning and spinning and spinning. And I think that there's many different versions of it, the way that it's explained. Like, I think like Joe Dispenza talks about it. There's so many different ways that it's talked about. And when I listen, I like to listen to all the different kind of variations for it, because it's all sort of describing that same thing of moving out into that space. Yeah.
Yeah. And also it does feel like, when I say that's the place to manifest from, it's almost like a clear channel. Like I think
Right.
we're all talking about the same. It's such a clear channel, or there's no other channels blocking it.
Right. Like really being able to get in there and, okay, this is what I want. Like, let me just say like the one word. If it's love, let me like find the love vibration, the love channel, and really like
Tune in.
be able to align myself. Yeah. Tune in, align myself with it, whatever feels right in that moment, as far as like the interpretation of it. But yeah, absolutely.
And I think I got you off track with the womb rocking. So let's go back to that. So it's actual physical rocking. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's moving the pelvic bowl back and forth. Sometimes when I'm doing it, it feels helpful to like have my hands on the front, like on my front and behind, like right above my pubic bone, and just feeling, and even like a lot of times I'll bend my knees and kind of like, so that my, even just, like my pussy is like closer to the earth, and like really like pulling in and like really, I think it also kind of activates some like what people call like the Kundalini energy, like the snake that moves up the spine, moves up the central column. I think, but it also like, even the first time that I did it, because I felt like I wasn't completely in my body the first time, like I could almost like visualize just like a little tiny, almost like trickle of like an energetic pull of like what I could like reach into. Like, it's hard to explain. It's like moving, like feeling where you can kind of connect in. If you're a very visual person, it may be like a literal like visualization of like me seeing that little trickle of like light, and I was like, okay, I can move into that. Other times it can just be like a physical sensation thing of like, oh, my body is really enjoying this, like let me keep moving and like just let it, sometimes when I've watched people do this, it's almost like you can watch the energy kind of ripple through.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, it's wild. One time I was watching a woman do it, and I could feel her starting to tap into collective grief, and I could feel it before she physically started, and I just watching her, I started like bawling, knowing that it was coming, because it's like there's definitely something in like the witnessing of it and watching other people tap into it. It's really powerful.
Wow.
And I think, yeah, it's so crazy. I'm going to have to make a video and put it up on my website, just to kind of show an example of it.
Okay. And also, so people, I was going to say people can see this on YouTube, or they can watch it with other people, or how does it happen?
I'm going to, before this comes out, I'll put something up on YouTube. So and we'll talk about the links and whatever. I'll make a video of myself doing it, and I'll be very vulnerable, because it's a vulnerable practice, of myself doing it. This is something that I learned from a couple different practitioners. I'm not sure exactly who first sort of talked about it, and I tried to research and couldn't really find the originator, but I'm going to put something up so we can kind of practice and do this together, because there's a group locally that we've been doing this together. But again, it's a very vulnerable state, because of what, like really tapping into that creation. It's like, it's the womb. It's like where creation, like where things kind of come in. Not that there's more than one space for that to happen, but I think the womb space personally is like very, very powerful for me.
And what do can men do this? Because men can do this because it's in the womb, right?
Yeah, men can do this, and it's almost like more like at the base of their balls. Like,
good to know. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
There's a little womb at the base of your balls.
Yeah. So it's like a similar space and like a similar movement. It's just like it's a little bit different, just energetically. But I think like men can absolutely. And maybe I should have used the proper word of testicles, not balls.
And also, so let's talk a minute about sex magic. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think this is such an interesting topic because I have a client. I love to talk to her. She does, what's it called? I guess I would, tantric sex. She's a tantric sex worker. And I'm always like, if you write a blog, I want to read it, because I think that we're so screwed up about sex that this kind of thing is downplayed. There was a wonderful book called Untrue that my friend Jennifer Way told me about. It gets a little depressing because it's how different cultures and how we used to think about sexuality before women were sort of owned, before women sort of became property. And it's really amazing. Some of it is like the opposite of what we think. A shaman told me, or I was talking to I believe it was my trainer who talked to a shaman. It wasn't me, but it was, or maybe it was in this book, but it was something about how women used to have 5 men, and one was the provider, and one was the made them feel secure, and one was the emotional support, and one was the hunter-gatherer, and one was for pleasure. And women had 5 men, and she would sleep with all of them, so none of them knew who the father was. But it's like, think of that. That's like a porn movie. If you don't know about, you know what I mean? Like, how interesting.
Very interesting.
And
I don't think I could handle it, but
I don't know.
That's too many men for me.
I know, but you know what? We would have been brought up different, with a different culture and different bodies. And there was one lady that was talking about, I think it was an aborigine, I shouldn't say it because I don't know, but a tribe where they have sex in the city circle, in the circle of where they live. And sometimes older women will like yell out instructions into younger women, like, do it like this or do it like that. Like, it's all overwhelming and kind of bizarre. But I think if we were in this society, I don't think you could do that. I think there's too much programming. But tell us about sex magic and what it is or what it means.
Yeah, so for me, it's been a practice of really just understanding my body, like understanding what feels pleasurable in my body, and kind of intuitively knowing when to start bringing kind of intention into it. So it's using that space with intention, and there's different. There's a tantric breath that you can do. There's different breath work. There's different movements. There's literal just like embodiment of just like rolling around and just like figuring out like what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and just like kind of leaning into that. And really, there's self-exploration is kind of where I've started with it, just because I really want to get to know exactly like where my body, like kind of where my edges are.
Okay.
With just with my sexual energy, and like if that's like the edge of like orgasm, if it's the edge of just pleasure in general, like where is it? And like, when do I say, okay, I'm on the edge of whatever I'm on the edge of, this is where I'm going to bring in the intention of, this is the art that I want to make. Let's like bring that into, the exploration of it. Let's like when to kind of bring that in. So it's like really getting to know yourself on that level.
So that's great. And also, like I've always said, sexual, creative, and psychic energy are all the same one. So when you're kind of working on one, you're working on the other. So I'm feeling like that's just really all of them working at once. Is that what it kind of seems like?
Yeah, I think, definitely. Because I mean, all of it has to kind of move together, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we can't just like advance only our psychic ability and like let the rest of it kind of go away, because, especially like nutrition or something, go away, because it all has to kind of come together. All these different kind of parts have to move together, have to elevate together. Otherwise the body just completely gets unbalanced and starts having some sort of weird freak out. I'm sure you've experienced the way the body can freak out if everything's not kind of moving together.
Yes, and that's where we end up carrying like all negative weight in our shoulders or in our stomach or something like that. And it's very funny because I think this year I've become more online with what's going on with my body. Like I'm just very, very aware of the stress that I hold in my shoulders that I was not as aware, or that it's kind of on all the time now. But that's something interesting about winter, because in LA, when I was going to hot yoga every day, riding my bike where it was so warm, I never felt old. In here, where it's so cold, and we don't kind of have hot yoga, it's like I feel that creaks and stretches and things that other people talk about. So it is very interesting that this is an awake part. As much as this is an ascension, this is an awakening time to know your body.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a person, I have to live with the seasons. Like I'm just so connected to my land and my property. Like I have to live with the seasons. So of course it's like, we start going into these darker months where, into winter, and really like losing the motivation to do like much more anything than like rest and kind of go under and just really like get into. It's a great time for sex magic. It's a great time for really like zoning in on some of your just like nutrition, your meditation practice, just those things that like can really slow you down.
Yeah, it's a big 3D time is what I want to say. Like I know it's a spiritual stuff, but it's, so many of my podcasts have suddenly gone down the route of water. Is your water clean? Is your water this? Is your water that? And it's just very interesting to me that I think the more you know yourself, the more you're in touch with your body, the more you know you need better stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes, especially with the clients that I've been working with, I've noticed a pattern of them just needing like permission to trust themselves and permission to do things their own way. And they look at me, they're like, oh, I can do it that way. I'm like, you can do it any way that you want. I'm not an authority on anything. I'm just showing you my way. And I'm also hopefully empowering you and giving you permission to do it whatever your way is. I want you to get into your own body and feel like what's right for you. Different modalities want to come through, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be any way that already exists.
Yes. And also that applies to diet also. Like everyone knows I'm vegan, but I've never pushed that on anyone. And it's not for everyone. Just knowing what works with your body, they can call it the blood diet. What is that? The one where you know your type of blood and that's what you're supposed to eat. I don't know. That might be true, might not be true, but knowing your body and what you need. And it's so funny because, I look at stuff I used to eat and I think, oh my God, what were you putting in you? I used to love Rice Krispie treats, and I was looking at my mom's when my mom would make them, and now they sell them, and there were like purple and pink marshmallows on, and all it looked like to me was like, oh my God, this is just a square of chemicals that I don't want in my body. But all right, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and Prithvika is my collection of consciously created crystal and nature-forged jewelry. Prithvika translates to of the earth in Hindi, which represents the natural earth-made materials I'm working with, along with my personal ancestry and grounded energy. Each piece is created through ceremony and science and completed with being Reiki charged. I'm currently featuring copper mirror necklaces, which can be used for protection and mirror magic. My intention is for your new piece of jewelry to feel like an extension of self, to help bring your desires to fruition and to amplify the magic within you. My Instagram is @Prithvika, and my website is prithvika.com. That's PRTHVEEKA.com.
All right, my dear. So when people come to you, tell me what do you do? tarot? Do you do psychic stuff? Do you do energy healing? Tell us all what you do and what's the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little bit of a hybrid. Sometimes the tarot comes in, but I'm reading the energetic body. I'm looking at the body, but I'm also, I'm one of those people that when my kind of skills came in, they all came in. Like I tend to see a little too much. So I have to really zone in on the person, have them say their names to me, see them as a certain color. I set myself as a different color so that I'm like keeping our energies separate. And I'm just starting to kind of build a map. And sometimes I'm very internal and I'm looking throughout the chakras. I'm looking within the body itself. Sometimes I'm looking more, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it like on the astral, where I'm just like watching in space, like specifically when they're asking about different people or connections or career, I'm kind of like watching where that lives within their energetic field. And I'm like, okay, let's ask, if there's two paths, I'll kind of like look at both paths and just kind of see where they connect, where there's like almost like a stronger, sometimes it looks like a garden. Sometimes like some things will look more in color versus like black and white. I'm really working with people, not just outwardly on like what's going on, but also like how it's affecting them inside, like where it's kind of affecting them in their body, if that makes sense.
And you see this visually in your head?
I do. Yeah. I'm super visual. Sometimes, despite my best efforts, sometimes I do still feel it in my own body. It's just, it's how my energy works. I want to fix people if I can, regardless of putting up the boundaries. So sometimes I do kind of take things on. It's just how I operate. So I'll start to feel, it'll start to like, my throat will get dry or this or that, and I'll start to feel, and then I'll also, like a lot of times because I work with plants, and different teas and things, I'll say, okay, I think, this just popped up in my head. Like, you really need some bananas. Like, it's time for potassium. Like, let's go. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, it's like, it's a body thing. So there's like physical parts to it. There's modalities that kind of come in. It's just kind of like an overall, like, let's look at you energetically and let's kind of smooth you out and get you ready for sort of your next kind of steps.
Okay, so their next steps in growth or moving forward. Do you ever have clients that you feel like they dig in their heels? They're not changing. I do. I have. It's very rare, but sometimes I get people that will they want an answer, and then you give an answer. They don't want that answer, so then you go, well, there's this other option, and then they're like, well, I don't want that. Like, I want to go back to the first answer. Like somebody that doesn't know who they are, that's struggling with that.
Yeah, that's really hard. And sometimes it's just like, I see it as like their energy spinning around in circles. And what I usually will give to them, I have a meditation that I have recorded and like available through my website that's called Running Energy. And it's running earth and cosmic energy simultaneously, like through the body. And it's a meditation. It's about 20 minutes. And it's a way of like starting to move their energy through so that it's like a little bit easier for me to sift through, because sometimes people are so clogged up that it's like, I say, okay, I just connect to their higher self. I'm like, all right, what do they need in this moment? Just tell me exactly what they need in this moment. There's too much going on here. What's the one thing that they can handle? One or two things that they can handle working on. And a lot of times it's just running that energy, just starting to like shift things just a little bit so that we can start breaking it down into like more digestible pieces.
That's such a good tip. And that's actually a good tip for me, because there's a couple of things. It's like, the other day someone said, oh, I had the perfect childhood. And I was like, oh, there's denial everywhere. That's usually the worst childhood. That's usually yeah. I'm not that there aren't good childhoods. There are good childhoods, but I don't know. Are there good childhoods? I don't know, because I think we're so messed up. When you watch Gabor Mate, my friend interviewed Gabor Mate, and there were so many Easter eggs, and I think he's just a healer as he speaks. But he was saying how all these mothers were taught when their baby cries to just let the baby cry it out. And he was saying how that's like one of the worst things you can do. And mothers wanted to hold their babies, but they said, no, you got to let him stop or he's never going to stop crying. And it's almost like it's not even about blaming parents. It's about we screwed the whole thing up. Who are we listening to?
Yeah. And that brings us back to just getting any sort of body awareness. And sometimes when I work with clients, they're asking about, well, what do I need for, sometimes I'll wrap it up in like a nice little package. Like, let's look into 2023, what's going to happen. And they come to me and like, who knows what they're expecting. Maybe me to tell them that on May 23rd, they're going to get $1,700. I don't know, but I bring them in. I know that they like their energy kind of resonates with me, and they come to me because they need me to just see where they're at and give them some of these other tools and just kind of open things up just enough. Sometimes I can be a little bit more dramatic and drastic with people, especially if they're just ready for it. We can like blast something open, but other times it's like, all right, let's just move this over a little bit to just give you a little bit of space and give you some tools around continuing to move it out on your own.
Yeah, it's interesting because those little spirals of energy, you have to get like, I feel like I still have the pieces. I don't know when it's going to be up. I'm making a tarot journal. I'm making a authenticity class, but I feel like there's so many of these little spirals around people now. I love that you gave me a way to describe them now, that they can't make a decision or they can't settle on one thing. Like, it's so much. And sometimes I can just like, as in a reading, it's kind of hard when that happens. You can't, you know what I mean? They want an answer to a question that doesn't have an answer.
Yeah, it's almost like they're just spitting things out. And sometimes I don't even listen to the questions. I'll just listen to the energy of like how they're talking and be like, all right, they don't even need an answer to this. They need, what I'm hearing right now is just some way to just settle their nervous system down just a tiny bit, just to soften just a little bit so that they can breathe, so they can take like a deeper breath.
And at that point, would you take it away from advice and do healing?
Sometimes I will, but other times I'll just kind of like soften it, like ask a couple little questions leading and just see like where they're at, what they're open to. And, there's been moments where people have just completely shut down. I see either them blank, like almost like glaze over sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or it'll be like more of a shutdown and they'll just go to something else. I'm like, all right, they're not ready yet. And that's okay. I'm just here to kind of, sometimes it's like you get into the space, just holding space for them to talk. And
yeah, that can happen a lot when someone just needs to talk when they haven't been heard.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
That's a huge issue right now. I feel like that's people want to be heard and they're not being heard.
Right. Not being heard, not feeling seen. And I'm okay with that. I'll hold whatever I feel is, whatever I'm trusting is for their best and highest good. And for mine as well, because sometimes maybe I need the lesson of just holding space in a different way. Because it's always like there's two sides to it, right? There's always something that I'm learning from these experiences as well.
It's funny when it gets like that, because I wonder if for me, it's mostly just giving the information of what's coming through to me, to the cards, you know what I mean? And then every once in a while, I think someone must tap off something in my childhood where I really want to help them, but they're really, they don't want to help. Have you ever had, I have some clients whose therapists will go, what did your psychic say? because I can say things they can't say. You know what I mean? Like So I've had that happen too. So when people book a reading with you, do you do any in-person body work, or mostly you just keep it to that kind of reading?
No, I do some in-person work, and it's more clearing. I have a sense that it's going to move into some kind of physical touch at some point. It hasn't fully developed in me yet, but I do work with people at least once a month. There's a spot up here that I'll go to that people will come and see me in person. And so occasionally I'll come to people's homes too. But for right now, it is a lot over Zoom, a lot over the phone. It's as easy for me to tap in as in person. Sometimes it's actually easier for me to tap in over Zoom because sometimes in person, it's just like holding the space becomes it's like a little bit different.
I feel like I do all my readings over the phone, and I feel like I get there's nobody making faces, nobody's looking at their phone. They're not, you know what I mean? Like I almost feel like it's a clearer channel.
Yeah, and I think once I do start doing more in person, if it does develop into more of a body, it's going to have to be a more permanent space that I can really lock down. Because right now I'm working like in a community space, so there's like multiple readers. So I have to go in, and readers are pretty good about clearing out their own stuff for the most part when the next person comes in. But because I'm so sensitive to it, I still will go through and just be like, all right, we're going to clean, just kind of like clear out whatever was left here before. We're going to ground in the space. We're going to hold the intention. It's interesting to work that way, but I definitely love to teach my students that too, to be able to hold their own space, be like, okay, well, how do you feel in this space right now? Like, would you like to emulate the same kind of feeling in your own space? Let me show you how to do that kind of thing.
Interesting. So what does 2023 hold for you?
2023 holds a lot of opening up, a lot of stepping into just bigger expressions, some bigger projects, really checking my ego with some of these things.
Mm-hmm. And I always have that. I'm a Leo, though. I always have that.
Yeah, I'm a Libra. I love to look at myself. Like, okay, like I love to see myself in certain scenarios. But really, creating the work, not for a specific outcome, but because I feel this passionately about it, whether it's working with my clients or creating physical work and, in my artwork in my business that way. It's really, really watching, this year I've also worked a lot with where is my ego when I'm in the reading space. So now it's like, okay, where is my ego when I'm in the creative space too? Like kind of watching those two and really being able to identify, oh, you're 100% in your ego right now. You're only making this because you want to be famous on TikTok or whatever the hell it is. Like, why are you doing this stuff? Is that really why you came here? Yeah. Let's break that down a little bit. So that's really kind of like what I'm going to be working on in 2023.
And there's a weird, it's kind of interesting because I feel like there's how do I say this? Sometimes you are in the right space and you just are holding that space. And that's a really hard thing for us, especially in this sort of get it done type society, to be like, oh, like maybe Karen, maybe you're just supposed to be in Utica to hold down some space there. It's like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? But yes. And you do work with plants. You use your own plant medicine or you do other plant medicine?
I do. So I worked with it in a couple different ways. I forage for myself to use both like in tinctures for my own consumption, also for clients' consumption. But then I also will use plants for natural dyes for my artwork. Yeah. So like the plants have been coming in different ways. I experiment with different ones. I kind of am called to different ones. Mushrooms have been coming in a little bit as well. But I don't think you can live in the middle of the woods where I live and not be called, not listen to the plants because, they are chatty.
Yeah. What do you feel like you hear when you talk to them? I know that I've always felt like talking to trees, especially in Los Angeles. In certain areas of Los Angeles, I felt like it was very loud.
Yeah. Mugwort was the first plant that I worked with that was on my property. My friend pointed it out. It started as a small patch, and since I started working with it, is now probably like at least quadrupled in size. I call her Mama Mugwort. She very much is the dream space, which is like where everything started for me. She makes me ask permission to work with her every single time I walk into that mugwort patch. She kind of tells me when it's okay, how much is okay to harvest from her, where it's going to go. Yeah. She's good. And then like once I tapped into that, then the other one started talking. Like lemon balm was like yelling at me one day, and I was like, what is lemon balm for? I don't even know. And I looked it up, and it's for like depression and headaches, and I was like, oh, probably because I was in the middle of a depression. Yeah, no wonder it's calling to me. So like starting to like slow down and listen. I mean, they just it's never quiet.
Wow. But also you being like, you like the seasons. But that goes with sort of, I hate to say it this way, but a witch background. Witches are very into the season and dates and times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love the seasons. I'm just, my body is so in tune to the seasons. My like skin will like shed, especially on my face, like when the seasons change. I mean, I'm very connected to it, and just knowing when to kind of like what to do with my energy in those times.
I am not, although I will say this winter hibernation thing, like I'm not fighting it because I'm like, okay, there's something to this or there's something there. But I've never slept so much and still got up tired.
Yeah, I mean, and that can be, there's definitely a difference working in a city or living in a city versus living in the country, in the woods. I mean, I noticed, like, I lived in Philadelphia for 15 years, and it took me probably a year and a half of being here before I understood the difference of how I held my body in the city versus how I can hold my body energetically in the woods, in the country. It's just, but I grew up on a farm, so it's like it's in my blood,
No, that's true. I was just I did an interview with somebody who was saying she would go out and sleep at night in the woods, and I was like, oh my God, that would never work for me. But it's that security, it's that knowing or knowing that the woods are supporting you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And even when we came to our home, we looked at one home. I can remember like where I was standing. My husband was walking ahead of me. We were just looking at the space for the first time. I turned around in the woods. The water was behind me, and I heard the trees go, "Welcome home." And I was like, "Oh, this is my house."
That's wonderful.
Like they're loud when when something needs to come across. And there's been things like we've had 3 deer die on our property, and I don't see that as a negative. I see that as we're holding a calm space here, and they come and they pass when it's time.
Wow.
So it's really being connected to where you're living.
Wow. Wonderful. All right, my darling, tell everyone where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me at blackboots.com, and I spell that BLCKBTS without any vowels.
Yes, Black Boots without any vowels. That's the easiest way to remember it. It's very good. All right, darling. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Awesome, Karen. As always, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.
And I hope I'm going to bump into you probably, maybe, hopefully before this even airs.
That would be amazing.
No more snow. You can have all the snow since you like it. All right. Okay. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media, and everybody, remember who you are. Paranormal Karen.